I don't know if you heard, but there's a by-election 1 week from today. In fact, the advanced polling started over the weekend. Now, I say that in jest because we've been talking about it a lot. There's a by-election in LaSalle-Émard-Verdun. And one of the reasons we've been talking about it is because there's a record number of candidates on the ballot. 91 candidates, in fact, the longest ballot committee trying to make a point on electoral reform. But if you go down the list of the candidates, take out, I think it's like 80 or so who are independent, then you start to look and say, oh, wait, there are some parties here who are running. Of course, the Conservatives and the Liberals and the Bloc and the NDP and the Greens, right? But there is a new federal party that is on the block. It's the Canadian Future Party. The interim leader of the party has joined us in studio, Dominic Cardy. Dominic, welcome to the show. You've been on the show repeatedly, but first time in studio.
Great to be actually in the studio. It's nice. Thanks for having me back on.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, listen, I'll tell you a story from my life. I was speaking about your party to someone, I won't say who, in recent memory, and they referred to your party as fringe. Well, it's just a fringe party. So, I mean, you're new. Mm-hmm. I don't think many people know about you.
Nope.
So how would you describe the Canadian Future Party at this point? Fringe or something else?
Well, definitely not fringe. We're going for the exact opposite. That we're small. We're a startup. Absolutely. We only got registered a few weeks ago, just a couple of days before the by-elections here in Montreal and out in Winnipeg were called. We've got candidates in the ballot, and Mark Curry's our great candidate here in Montreal. But we're describing ourselves. Our key line is we're saying we're not looking for politics to go left, not right, but going forward. And we want to try and bring an evidence-based approach to politics where that's the core of our ideology and where we will embrace challenging policies if the evidence says that's necessary. We embrace science. We embrace personal freedom. We embrace working together where government can show that government's the best vehicle for achieving collective projects. We want to try and make democracy deliver. It's hard to defend our healthcare system, for example, when you go and talk to young people and they're saying, why should I pay 40% of my taxes for a service that I can't access? I don't have a family doctor. My folks can't get surgery. Those sorts of problems. We want some more radical solutions to build our institutions up, not tear them down.
Now, it does sound like you've given yourself a path that is a hard one.
Absolutely.
Because I think the way things currently are in politics, it's the extremes that suck up all the oxygen, get the posts on social media, get the mind share. And you know, I get sometimes like Mark Garneau vibes, you know, with just a calm, reasoned, rational approach, which sometimes doesn't light the world on fire.
For sure.
So how do you get people onto your cause when it's hard to even get that base of support? I've seen, newer parties, they go to extreme, but they quickly can get a base.
Yep.
How do you build a base of, hey, we're just normal people?
Well, I think part of that is that there's a hell of a lot of normal people out there who are pretty upset right now that I think Canadians have pretty much decided they want to change from Mr. Trudeau, but they look at Mr. Poilievre and they're concerned about that extremism that you mentioned and a political culture that drives people further and further to the extremes. So you're quite right, though. A party that's just a boring technocratic party saying, well, everything's fine. Let's just work to make these little fixes here and there. That's not what we're about. We're talking about, just to take the healthcare example, pretty radical reforms. We want to have a mandated push across Canada using the federal government's authority to reopen the Canada Health Act so that foreign-trained medical professionals, the hundreds of thousands of them who are busy driving heart and cancer patients to hospitals and then leaving them at the door so they can then wait for heart and cancer care inside hospitals because there are no doctors. Yeah. It's crazy. So there are things like that where we've just got to stop accepting second best as a country. And our politicians who this summer spent more time talking about recyclable Tim Hortons coffee cup lids than they did about the fact the world's on fire, our immigration system is being blown up. The list goes on.
Where would you stand? Here's a contentious issue, right? Where would you stand on immigration in Canada?
We need immigrants. But we also need a system that works. And it's a great example of how neither Mr. Trudeau's party nor Mr. Poilievre's are fit for purpose. Mr. Poilievre loves to talk about getting rid of gatekeepers. There were two areas in the immigration system, temporary foreign workers and the student visa program, that were still influenceable by politicians. The rest of our system has been pretty much removed from the day-to-day oversight of politicians, exactly to stop it from becoming corrupt and politicized. Those two areas, the Liberals took advantage of that lack of gatekeepers and blew our entire immigration system apart, doing more damage to our social cohesion as a country than I can think of any other government doing. And for a supposedly progressive government, they should be ashamed of themselves for the damage they've done to perceptions of immigration in this country. Because it's going to we're going to need to have serious restrictions on the numbers of immigrants coming in under those categories. We've got to have talk with business about why we can't get Canadian Canadian businesses to hire Canadians. And we've got to make sure that we are treating immigrants to this country decently and not selling them a bill of goods. I know people who've saved up money from entire villages to get people to come to Canada. And they come here expecting that there's going to be this informal path to citizenship that the Liberals have kind of laid out. It was dishonest and it was wrong. And we've got to go back to being clear about our immigration system, its limits, and making sure that Canadians regain confidence in the system. So you'll hear some radical changes from us on that.
And just it's not lost on me what we're seeing from the United States, where they're saying that the groups, these communities that came to Canada under that notion, are now headed south. Because they're like, well, geez, can't try it in Canada. Let's. It's not working here. Let's go somewhere else.
Well, it's that comfort with systems that don't work, where we keep on just playing around the edges rather than engaging in real reform. And when you let the systems degrade, you end up by having systems that are under the control of individuals like the Prime Minister or whoever else is in charge. And if you do that, you end up by being really limited in your ability to get good policy, because politicians, of course, are self-interested. They're human beings. There's nothing wrong with that.
So
let's make sure the systems work.
Use the word ashamed, right, about what's happening over the immigration system in this country. We're with Dominic Cardy. He's interim leader of the Canadian Future Party. So with that in mind, I have heard some really tough talk from current Liberal MPs. They're in the party. They're not happy with how their party is run, right? And we've had this discussion. I've had it with you. I've had it with Rick Peterson, who is also someone who's started up and founded your party, right? And for you guys to make a splash, here's my estimation of the whole thing. You know, who cares what happens in a week in these by-elections? You're probably not going to light the world on fire in these by-elections. We shall see. Maybe you'll surprise a lot of people. But for the next election, there's two ways this goes. Either it's a flash in the pan and your party dies a quick death, or it does something big to make an impact. I would be going after the disaffected Liberals right now who are currently in office, right? They are current MPs, and they see the writing on the wall that with the Liberal brand, they're headed to defeat. I'd be looking at trying to make a big splash. I've heard murmurs that is being attempted here, but do you have a big plan to get your voice heard where, you know, it's one thing, listen, God bless our station, CJAD 800, but you need a moment where you wake up one morning and the Globe and Mail and the National Post and all of the big players like CTV and Global and CBC and the like are all talking about a move that you've made. Is that coming?
It's going to be. To mention some of our plans on healthcare, you're going to hear ideas on healthcare reform that no party has talked about. We are the only party which is talk about something that people should be embarrassed about. The Conservatives should be ashamed that they have abandoned our national defense and refused to commit to spending 2% of our budget on defense, of our GDP on defense. That is absolutely bizarre at a point when Canada is facing multiple security crises, from a rapidly warming Arctic. Of course, half the Conservatives don't believe in climate change, so there's that. But rapidly warming Arctic, war in Europe affecting our supply lines, that forget about our need to defend democracy. Our way of life is under threat if the international economic system is disrupted. Canada's a country that relies on trade. We have instability in the US. Any party that's not talking about a serious national security plan in the context of the world we're seeing in 2024 is deeply irresponsible. One of the reasons I wanted to start this party was that feeling that Mr. Poilievre, Mr. Trudeau are really not being honest with Canadians about the challenges we're facing in terms of those external threats, but the ones here at home too. And as you said earlier, too often we see those parties rage farming around social media clicks and engagement rather than talking about how do we fix our institutions.
Before I have to let you go, I do want your thoughts on what came out of the LaSalle-Émard-Verdun riding over the weekend, that pamphlet from the NDP candidate, Craig Sauvé, that shows him in front of a Palestinian flag, which says, "I'm voting Craig Sauvé to stop the genocide in Gaza." What you took aim at the Conservatives and the Liberals over the last few minutes. What is your take on what we saw out of the NDP?
I was arrested in Toronto a month or so ago for being the only person standing in a crowd of 500 people, being very upset about the death of a Hamas leader and saying "Free Palestine from Hamas." I believe that we should stand by our democratic ally in Israel, despite Israel's flaws, and we have got to be clear about that. Hamas is a ultra-right-wing, misogynist, homophobic terrorist organization that is torturing the people of Palestine as much as it is invading and taking away the rights and life and liberty of Israelis. We need a free Palestine, but that has to start with the elimination of Hamas. So Mr. Sauvé's desperate efforts to win votes in the by-election, I think, is bluntly contemptible. And you're going to hear clear messages like that on complicated issues from my party, because the Canadian Future Party is trying to fill that space where, instead of mealy-mouthed, sort of, well, Mr. Trudeau's fallen in this trap. He's got protesters from both the Jewish community, the Israeli community, and from the Palestinian community, because no one's quite clear where he stands. Mr. Poilievre on Ukraine, one day he votes against Ukraine, trying to appease the MAGA folks in his party who are as opposed to Western democracy as Mr. Putin. The next day he says he's in favor. We stand unequivocally with Ukraine, unequivocally with Israel. We stand for democracies when there are conflicts in the world. The only way we preserve democracy at home is if we defend it around the world.
Perhaps for the political orphans out there, some of that messaging resonated with you. That's Dominic Cardy. He's interim leader of the Canadian Future Party. Thank you, Dominic, for coming in studio.
Hey, thanks for having me in.
Talk again
Talk to you soon.